And arrested all those people, and they mostly died in labor camps. When I look at things like MySpace and Gmail and SMS, I see a massive surveillance network. And I mean, a few weeks ago, maybe that would have seemed really insanely paranoid, except now we know that the NSA is trawling almost every phone call in the United States to do traffic analysis. At least all we've found out about so far is that they're doing traffic analysis. We don't know what kind of content analysis they're doing. So I'd like to hear about your reflections, because you guys remember the 60s when social movements were destroyed by FBI attacks. I wonder if you would comment on how vulnerable we have made ourselves by dependence on these technologies. And I want to highlight another vulnerability that hasn't come up here either, and I'm particularly pleased to be here at Cisco to raise this vulnerability. 93% of the desktops running in the world today run on Microsoft platforms. What happens when Microsoft decides that, as a part of a deal with the federal government, in order to sell a whole bunch more contracts to the federal government, that they will agree to make it contractually illegal to use Microsoft software to criticize the United States government? What happens? So you're then in license violation if you use their software in this way. What happens if SBC, AT&T, and Verizon decide that they refuse to carry packets that carry content that is inconsistent with the current federal line? Just, hey, there's plenty of other ways to make your point. As John Gilmore's case with the federal government showed, when the federal appeals court said, hey, you don't need to travel by air, you can walk someplace. Right? I mean, federal courts have become increasingly absurd in this way, and so it seems totally reasonable to assume that they'll say, well, you don't have a right to free speech on the internet because you can stand up on a soapbox. And finally, I would ask how we as a community of people who are social activists promoting human rights, human dignity, social good, and disruption, the title of this talk, how should we react to our friends? I mean, many of my best friends work at Yahoo and Cisco and Microsoft. What should I tell them next time they build an even better firewall of China or turn over the next journalist to face 15 years in the labor camp?
I think you eloquently stated the concerns. I wouldn't try to amplify it. Let me offer a specific example of where there's a possibility to make a difference. I was working on a project. I got smudged just a little bit. They're trying to get a major company to do something different that you all approve of, and couldn't get it through the executives' heads. And then suits are people, and they have families, and they have children, and they have aspirations, and the same is true for every faceless bureaucrat in Washington. And what you want to do is get to the person who has the biggest influence on them, and that's their teenage children. And this was an instance where we educated a teenage daughter. I wouldn't say educated her, but one doesn't educate teenagers. But we did whatever, you know, and she got to her dad. And Dad got tired of hearing the complaints from the daughter, night after night, dinner after dinner, about what was going on. And the company changed its policy because he was the CEO. I think you have to look for points of leverage like that. Your friends at Yahoo, thank God they're at Yahoo. Thank God they're at Cisco or Google. It's better to have people who are conscious and concerned working at these companies than to have people who don't think about the implications. And I would think a simple conversation about possibilities and implications would be sufficient to help things.
So it sounds like the strategy you're recommending is to get to Jenna Bush.
You know what to say.
He told me to be immoderate. Howard, did you want to respond?
Well, you know, I certainly agree that the chapter of my last chapter of my last book was called "Always On Panopticon," and that's the shadow of this very illuminating technology. I would say that in general, there are no technologies that shed a large amount of light that don't also have very dark shadows. In this one, as in all technologies, the political side of it, not the hardware or the software, is really the place for influence. And while you were saying that, I couldn't help think what a tremendous uproar there would have been politically in this country if the kind of technological surveillance that's been put into place in recent years had happened under Attorney General Reno and the Clinton administration. Whatever happened to mistrusting your government? So I think this country was based on fear of the tyrant, fear of the mob. Somehow we have to elect political leaders who go back to those principles. And you know, we're seeing people like Bob Barr, extreme right-wing former member of Congress, saying this is enough. I think there are a great many people in the military and in the intelligence community and in the Republican Party who are as fearful as you are, because they're not quite sure that the people who are going to be in charge of that surveillance are going to be their people forever. So I think that's an important message to get across. If you're having a political discussion, it has to do with how far are you going to trust someone who might be elected 5 or 10 or 15 years from now. I don't have a lot of optimism about putting a stop to the technological capabilities of surveillance. All of the video cameras out there now are not all digital. They're not all connected through the internet. The software for facial recognition is not quite there yet, but I think there are no barriers to that other than time. I think 5 or 10 years from now, they will be digital, they will be interconnected, and they will know who they're looking at. So it's not too late to do something about the political use of these. I don't know what we can do about the technological use of it.
You know, it's real simple. We're at war. We're at war. And when Americans are at war, our collective IQ drops by about 30 points. You know, World War II, we interned American citizens. When America's at war, it does unbelievably stupid things. I don't think you're going to be able to slow, much less reverse, the electronic surveillance going on until we're no longer at war.